Season 7 of the CSC Challenger Series, brought to you by Partners Promoting Darts. Fellas, I cannot believe that we are already in Season 7 of this fiasco. Will Stuart, Sean Green, Nick Dichiria, let's get right to it. Sean, what are your thoughts, man? Season 7.
Well, looking at this bracket, it's going to be awesome. I'm excited for it. Division 2 is stacked. Look, those averages are within 0.25 of each other. And then in Division 1, we're within a point of each other now. And that actually is a huge difference. I'm excited for the season. I think it's going to be big. Nick Dichiria, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, every time a season ends, it feels so long until we get that next season. But honestly, this offseason flew by for us. Season 7, the election year for PPD. And boy, am I excited to see who gets to hold that title. I mean, we got to see Danny Baggish stop from Mike Maloney doing a potential three-peat. Leonard Gates, of course, having the 2 times titles. There's a lot of people very hungry to hoist that trophy.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Nick. I think that we've got some new competitors in the field, which is always great. And, of course, our Division 1 and Division 2 brackets are pretty stacked. But, yeah, how about WCS? Big mention to Chrissy Grimmel there. She will actually be in the field for our CSC Challenger Series this season as well. So it'll be great to see how it turns out. So, well, fellas, let's get started here with our CSC selection show with Division number 2. Breaking news, as you can see. And we're going to lead us off with Gabe Steffen, Christian Broussard. What do you say there, Sean?
Yeah, a couple of guys that are pretty close to each other there in the West, with Christian Broussard being in Washington and Gabe Steffen being in the Dakotas. And I think it's going to be a great battle between these two guys that Christian, I think it's his first time in the CSC or second time in the CSC, but he has always been a major part of our TOC qualifiers. So it's going to be great to see him battle with someone like Gabe Steffen. Goofy Gabe is going to give him quite the battle, I think.
Yeah, and Gabe, of course, has been in the Division 1 before, so seeing him in Division 2, seeing how he fares. And then how about on the bottom side, Daryl Cortez and Shane Watson? That's interesting there. I mean, Daryl Cortez, one of our former finalists, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and he's actually kind of at the bottom of the averages overall. And here's how crazy this season of CSE is going to be. He's actually my dark horse pick. I know he's a former champion, but he's one of those former champions that we now see him kind of in the background watching, his other friends kind of play more often. And I think that's just lighting a fire under him to get right back into the mix and be that person kind of out front.
I agree with that. Nick, what's your thoughts, buddy?
I think this is debatably one of the toughest quarters that we're going to take a look at for Division 2. Out of the 4 of them, this is top 4 for sure of toughness. You look at these guys. Honestly, the name that jumps off the sheet here is Gabe Steffen. I think how we've seen him have success in Division 1 could potentially have that same success in Division 2, if not more. Last season, I looked at Jake Smith, and I picked him as one of the favorites. And while he still is going to be one of the top tier talents in this mix, honestly, in this quarter, I'm looking at Gabe, and my eyes are basically solely on him there.
Well, I like this next kind of lineup here. We got Donnie Ram and Bobby Dees Jr. Now, those 2 Midwest players. Donnie, of course, of Oklahoma City currently, formerly of Houston, and then Bobby of Belleville, Illinois. Now, Donnie is one of those Oklahoma guys that can really play, and it's great to see these Oklahoma boys in the mix now. I mean, we're going to start to see more and more of these individuals creep and crawl into their way into the CSC. So he's going to be the start, and I'll be interested to see his run here in this season 7.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And Bobby Dees is another player that I've heard of many times before, and I'm excited to see him in action. What I've heard from him is he's going to be a really tough test, which is why I think that first round battle between him and Donnie Ram is going to be a really, really big one. The problem is that if you win that one, you got to go up against the winner of Aaron Gibney and Jake Smith. Yeah. And Jake Smith is definitely, especially this season in Division 2, got to be one of the favorites.
I'll be honest here, Nick, before I give you the favorite. Jake's one of those characters that hasn't fonded well in the CSC of late. So it'll be interesting to see how he turns up. Does he fare well? He maybe hasn't had the the fondest of memories with remote play. So yeah, it'll be interesting there, especially with the above lineup of Donnie and Bobby. I know both those guys convert well between steel and soft. They play a lot of both. They'll be a tough competitor either way that one goes. So interesting bracket we have here to lead us off, huh, Nick?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I do have a final thought on Shane Watson in particular. I think that he's one of those guys where we saw him get into the mix last season, but he's a brand new dart player. He's pretty much a green shirt when it looks to all these other guys and these talents in this particular section. I think the experience that he's been receiving lately will potentially be very helpful in him causing some upsets. And I do believe Shane Watson, if he beats Theo Cortez, is an upset. But if he does do it, it could prove some interesting signs from the Florida talent that's trying to prove himself in a very tough field. Let's go ahead and take a look at our second quarter here. What do you guys say?
This is another great quarter here as we lead off with two Wisconsinites and Steve Hilger and Bob Anderson. Bob, of course, your Whammo state champion this year in level 1. Steve Hilger, we all know what he's capable of doing. Man, and then as you just work your way on down the line, I mean, you get Brett Hollanday in the mix here, Chrissy Grimmel, Jonathan Long, Nick Yeast. Wow, what a little bracket here, huh, Sean?
Yeah, this one's big. I know that there's some favorites that are in this quarter of the bracket for sure. You cannot sit there and say that Chrissy Grimmel isn't a favorite in season 2. She's been a season 1 participant yesterday. My goodness, last season, and has rolled through the WCS now twice. And we're talking averaging better than a lot of those males. And I'm fully expecting her to do well in this season of the CSC Challenger Series. On the other end, Porky is obviously a big name that stands out to you. And it's another name that you would agree, Will and Nick, that hasn't really performed well in the CSC style, even though he's been a 5th, 6th finisher in Division 1 before.
Admittedly, I think he says it's hard to stay focused. And that's from a guy that plays 3 or 4 league matches at a time, and that's just nuts. But that's the truth of the factor is it's hard to stay focused in the remote side, especially for the long extended format. But Nick, what do you have to say about this little doozy of a quarter?
Well, I'm going to peel behind the curtain here, right? All three of us, I asked us to all submit our picks for Division 1 and 2 early, and that kind of lock them in advance before we actually had this discussion here. All three of us picked Hilger, by the way, as one of our potential favorites. And I actually had to change my pick because of that. Now, looking at this matchup, I will say that is a very tough first matchup for Hilger and for Anderson, right? If whoever wins that matchup has a good chance of winning this whole quarter. You guys are absolutely right. You can't count out Chrissy. And of course, I mean, we're kind of almost glossing over the fact that Brett Hollanday is a champion of Division 2. He's done it before, and he averaged a 5 doing it, going up into that final. So it's a tough section here. Of course, I am going to give the edge to Hilger here, but I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Chrissy, if you saw Brett. I mean, even like Nick Yeast or Jonathan Long, both gentlemen that have had experience in this tournament as well.
Yeah, and that's another factor is both those guys are that's going to be a battle, and it could go the distance there between Jonathan Long and Nick Yeast. I think Jonathan of New York, Nick of that Quad Cities area there. So, yeah, who knows? And then let's not leave out Kellen Sperlin. He's of Waterloo, Iowa. And then you also have Monty Cooper, a newcomer. He's from Sullivan, Missouri, where the PPD is actually located. So yeah, you can't leave out those newcomers, but we'll find out and see if how they fond. Well, let's go to the quarter number 3 here of Division 2. Jonathan Hussman, Tyler Burrows, Chris Watson, and Corey Beck. You had James Huskin and Wes White. And Jason Hoxton, Ray Morgan. Another good quarter here, especially Chris Watson, the bar darter, playing Corey Beck, who went to the finals last year and, if I'm not mistaken, defending champion. Exactly. So that's a tough one right there.
Yeah, I actually have Corey Beck as my pick in Division 2 this season. And the reason why that is my pick is not because of obviously this first round matchup. That's going to be a tough one for him. Especially because Watson's been playing better as of late. But it's just because of the sheer fact that he had to roll through that very tough bracket last season and that confidence that he was able to accomplish that goal is really going to, I think, slingshot him forward. And also, it makes us not pick him because he just won. And I think that's an unfair bias that I had originally when I was looking at the list. So I'm just going to pick Corey Beck to repeat.
Okay. What do you have to say here, Nick?
Yeah. You look at Chris Watson, right? He doesn't like winning in the first round. Let's be real. That is his best runs. The run where he got first and the run where he got third were runs where he lost in the first round. So going up against the last season's champion, I don't think is going to phase Watson at all. Either he's going to have a great first round or he's not. And if he wins the first round against that opponent, then that's even better than going with his traditional strategy. Of course, Huseman here for up top against Tyler Burrows is an interesting matchup. I think a lot of people were excited to see John in the mix last season. He didn't quite get the results he wanted. I think he's going to be a little bit more settled here. And then, of course, I also think last season we started off with that Ray Morgan, Jason Derby match. And I thought that was one of the most exciting matches possible. I thought it was really fun, a lot of high octane moments. And I think Ray Morgan's going to be looking for an opportunity to try to repeat that performance. If you look at the section, you have to favor Corey Beck or Chris Watson, whoever comes on top of that match. But that's because you're looking up against two previous champions going up against each other in round one.
Another thing, I'm going to keep mentioning it because all of our players in this bracket and Division One are fantastic players. So there's no real true easy quarter. But this is another doozy because you got James and Wes. I mean, James a fantastic Wisconsinite. He's another quality shot that just looking at the brackets, all these matches could go 9-6 or better. So 9-6, 9-7, 9-8. I think that's going to happen in this bracket. Or in this quarter. I don't think you're going to see a big spread where you get that 9-2 or even 9-3 here in this quad. These guys are all kind of equal competitors here.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback off that. We've seen in years past with Division 2 is you have a couple of flunkies almost, right? A couple of people that just kind of came out a little bit cold, wasn't happy with the performance and the statistical anomaly from what they normally perform at. I think this is the season where I don't think we see any of these players have these real low drop-offs. I think most of these guys are going to be a lot more comfortable, even the newcomers, right? They're going to be a little bit more comfortable. They're familiar with the show. This is season 7. People are looking forward to the opportunity, but I think they're going to be more prepared than ever when you look at all these different competitors.
Well, let's take it to the fourth quarter. Here we go for Division 2. Some names we are familiar with here. Paul Otto, John Edwards, Correctionville, Iowa. We got Steve Henning and Cooper Olson. That's another good battle there. Dan Gregg and John Pilgrim. And then Jeffrey Johnson taking on Zach Fuchs. Boys, another what can we say? Another good quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. This one features some of those bigger names, maybe some of those newer guys like Dan Gregg. Cooper Olson's playing in this for the first time, I believe, or second time. He didn't play in it last season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
and if
he
did.
He did.
Let's just cut that out then. Let's reach I'm just kidding. John Edwards, of course, is one of those guys that's kind of a giant killer. He's been playing in season 1 a lot, so to see him in season 2. Paul Otto from Michigan is going to be a very tough test for him. But my favorite to make it out of this group is going to be Wisconsinite John Pilgrim.
And that's a good pick. I mean, he's last year's TOC Elite finale champion. With his
Matt Bella.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You can't forget about that because it takes some doing it takes some pressure situations to get through that battle and win. And another person you can't forgo about is Jeffrey Johnson, and I think a lot of that is he's just a savvy veteran player, but also he's a little bit slower, a little bit mechanical, and that can play a toll here on the remote side of things, where if you get maybe a slower player, you're thinking about things more on the other end, and more time to think necessarily isn't a great thing. So we'll see how this one plays out. Nick, what do you have to say?
Well, if you're going to go in the betting pool for Division Two, just bet with someone with the first name John. There's a lot of Johns in D2 this year, and then of course you got
Fair.
John Edwards, John Pilgrim in this section. Those are the guys I'm actually taking a close look at here. Again, you guys have already hammered on the head. These guys are all close in average. This is purely superlative based off what we think they're going to bring to the table, and just also their comfortability with the format. Right? I know John Pilgrim's a seasoned veteran of the show. He's been in pretty solid form. I really could go either way here. I don't have any hard takes. I'm going to give a slight edge to actually John Edwards' toy box on the other side in this section, but I wouldn't be surprised if all 8 of these guys somehow got through, and I don't even know how that would work.
I'll recap. My dark horse is Daryl Cortez. So he's kind of my sleeper pick there. My 2 favorites overall are Corey Beck and Porky, but Corey Beck is my favorite to repeat and win this season 7 of the CSC Challenger Series.
Nick, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to have to lean heavy on Gabe Steffen here. I really do think he has a pretty strong chance. He has that very high gear in his nature. Of course, I wouldn't be surprised if Porky took the run. I think all 3 of us were kind of initially thinking that before reanalyzing our options here. I'm really curious to see how the run will develop, but I don't really have a dark horse because if I had to pick a dark horse, it would be Shane Watson. I think that he has a lot to prove. I think he's very hungry for it, and if he can just get settled, he might be a real threat that a lot of these guys aren't really kind of having on their radar yet.
You guys have your picks. I'm going to go ahead and stick with Steve Hilger as my number 1. I think my sleeper pick is going to be, just looking over some names, I'm going to go with John Pilgrim. I think that was a good dark horse pick from the one and only Sean Green, and I like that. If he can just go week to week, stay consistent, keep the right mindset, he could be our champion at the end.
Look, let's not coach the players that we're picking right now, okay? And
Don't
making sure that they play a little bit better than normal, all right? John, if you just want to focus a little bit more and maybe just make sure that your head's in it every week, and this is a mental game, take it one step at a time, and then I'll pick you as my dark horse. Does that sound good, John? All right.
I do want to clarify for chat because I know they're already confused. Sleeper pick does not always mean Porky because of sleeping. I just want to clarify that. I know a lot of you guys are confused now. That's why sleeper pick is in the guy that might sneak up on everybody, not the guy that's in the back of probably my guest bedroom right now.
Oh my goodness. All righty, fellas. Well, let's do it. Let's get to Division 1, the moment you've all been waiting for. We'll line up as follows. Christian Beard takes on Derek Hinkle. Mike Scarborough taking on Gary and Cole. Brandon Kessler versus Leonard Gates. JC Martinez taking on Shane Johnson. Oh my. This quarter. I mean, just right off the bat.
Mouthful. Has been a mouthful.
It really has. Brandon Kessler, Leonard Gates, right off the bat, just looking at that one is an appetizing first round matchup, and maybe we get that on the stream first. I don't know. What do you guys say?
Well, I mean, this is the first quarter, right? And you're already seeing some of those big names. Mike Scarborough, Gary and Cole is a good matchup. Christian Beard, Derek Hinkle is going to be a good one. Derek Hinkle is going to try and get off to a stronger start than he did last season, where he had a tough match out the gate. How about Sugar Shane Johnson, JC Martinez? JC Martinez, one of those top 6, 7 averages heading into this. So is Brandon Kessler and Leonard Gates. So that 4 right there is so tough. And it's going to be very difficult to make it out of that. And whoever does, I think it's going to be the favorite to win this quarter of the bracket.
Well, we just saw Brandon Kessler and Leonard Gates participate in the WCS with Olivia and Lane Lysak. So, they put up quite the effort in that one, but usually when you have singles play, you average just a little bit better, and we'll see what they can bring to the table here in this quarter. Nick, what do you got for us here?
I mean, you look at this, of course, that Brandon Kessler Leonard Gates match jumps right off the sheet. It's going to be so fascinating because, of course, Leonard Gates, 2-time champion, you can't discount anything with him. But the numbers that you see if you look at Brandon Kessler's Facebook as of late, I mean, absolutely impressive. His performance in the WCS, I think, debatably was a little bit more impressive than Leonard Gates was, if I'm being entirely honest. Not by much, to be fair, both great performances. And then it's hard to look past that match in particular. You look at JC Martinez, and he went full machine last season. He did the big upset. He took down Maloney on the winner side there. It was an incredible performance from him. And if he can replicate that energy, he's going to be great. And I know famously, it was season 5. I picked Sugar Shane Johnson as a favorite. I will never do that again. No, Sugar, of course, going to be a good competitor there for JC to go off, but I think JC has just put up the better numbers as of late. I would expect probably a round 2 matchup of, I'm going to go, honestly, Kessler and Martinez on that side. On the other side there to take a look, I'd probably go with a Scarborough-Hinkle matchup in round 2, and it's anybody's game after that.
I like the way you're thinking. Well, let's kick it on over to our second quarter, and there you have it. Danny Baggish, Joey Mann. That's another doozy. Dennis Sandin, good to see him back in the flow here, taking on Ram Guevara. That is a Stupid Juice final rematch, so excited to see that one. Garrett Rakowski taking on Austin Braswell. Richard Sturbins taking on Jesse Gore. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, let's talk about the big names first, right? You got Garrett Rakowski, Winmore sponsored player, getting in the CSC Challenger Series and trying to mix it up. He is that Wisconsinite that when we first met him, he had 4 perfect 0-1 games. And I mean, he's going to be a very difficult person in this quarter for sure. Then you have Jesse Gore down there at the very bottom, taking on a former Division II champion and Richard Sturbins. Ram Guevara. I mean, what else can we say about Ram? When's he going to break through? Right? When's he going to make that final? When's he going to really make that final again? And when's he going to really get over the top? He had a really good push a couple years ago against Mike Maloney. And I know that he's performing right now better than he ever has before. And then, of course, you have Joey Mann in that top part of that. Is taking on someone named Danny Baggish, maybe a former champion of the CSC Challenger Series Season 6. I just think it's going to be a great battle all around. And then, of course, the legend, Dennis Sandin, right? It's going to be a really tough match for Ram out the gate. I will pick my person after we let Nick talk about why his Floridians are going to win.
Go ahead, Nick. We'll leave it to you.
So, taking a look at this, obviously the Florida heavy section of the bracket between Danny, Austin, Rich Sturbins, and Jesse Gore there. I will say it now. The winner of Division 1 will come from this quarter. I definitively will say that's my stance on this. And honestly, my gut is screaming to me, look at Garrett Rakowski, keep an eye on him here. Because
did you guys just hear that?
What?
Mike Maloney just threw something somewhere.
Yeah, we'll get to him when we get to him. But if you look at Rakowski, I think he has a lot to prove. He's fallen short just of qualifying purposes for like getting games in. He's finally gotten in this mix. Austin Braswell, on the other hand, one of those guys where even Kenny Doyle has made the nod and said, Austin has the chance to be that guy for Florida, to be like the next big name, finally break through. He's come a long way from his Johnny Lackey match that we saw where the Chive incident first happened, where it was the last leg decider, 1,000+ point game. And it was one of the most intense scenarios. And he's only grown since then. He's over a 5 average now, or right at the cusp of it. And of course, Dennis, you guys mentioned PPD royalty, if you ask me. Class act, really nice guy, and person that's been at the program for a long time. I am going to probably in this quarter lean towards Rakowski. Baggish in the 3rd round probably matchup.
I don't mind that selection at all. I do think that, I mentioned Brandon Kessler, Leonard Gates. I think that Danny Baggish, Joey Mann, as well as Dennis Sandin and Ram Guevara could as well be very appetizing streamed matchups. So either way on those, we can't go wrong. I mean, Danny, former champion, defending champion. Dennis, just what he's meant to the program. He's won so much money being involved in partners promoting darts. And I'm telling you, you can't sleep on him. I mean, the race to 9 stamina could be an issue there just with him getting back into the flow of things, but we'll find out. Nick, let's take it to our third quarter, buddy, as things just keep on looking better. Rick Hensey taking on Scuba Steve Diker. Casey Jones taking on Mike Maloney. Mike Segal taking on Don Kirby. And then Don Stewart taking on Ryan Earl.
Rick Hensey, Scuba Steve Diker. I mean, you want to talk about a match that season 1, season 2 of the CSC Challenger Series would have screamed at us as like a major match, and it still really is. But is Rick even the best Hensey anymore?
It doesn't really seem like it right now these days. I mean, Tyler, what he's been able to do is just impressive, and I mean, either way, great first round matchup between Rick and Scuba.
I just want to apologize really quickly to Tyler because I just said something that's going to make sure that his dad never loses to you again.
I was going to say you got him into some high water there. Yeah. Nick, what do you have to say?
I mean, you look at the mouth Don Kirby. We picked him to go on some good runs last season. He's always an interesting X factor. Honestly, Don Stewart in his comeback tour in the last couple of months. I mean, the first time I watched him really come out of that, he kind of stepped away from the game for a little bit. And I watched him in February at a tournament play, and he's starting to put up those numbers again. He's starting to get comfortable, and he's starting to get over, the famous itis, right? If he is in true form, he is obviously going to be lethal here. But Rick Hensey, he's made the finals run before. He has a lot to prove. And I'll be honest, as of late, he hasn't put up the numbers or these crazy performances that I think we were used to seeing from him about a year ago. I think he's going to be eager to do so again. And I'm so excited because either Hensey or Diker, I think Maloney, Casey Jones, I think it's going to go potentially Maloney's way. If that does happen, that second round matchup is an absolute juicer. And that's not even to discount Casey Jones. I watched him play over in Plover in a tough match against Luke Pritzel, where he did come out on top. And Pritzel, of course, a competitor in the CSC as well. It's going to be so tough to say. You have to kind of give a nod to the 2-time Maloney in this section. But honestly, I'm calling a secret little Don Stewart run here, I think. I think any of the Dons, either one. But I'm going to lean towards Stewart.
First of all, completely hate you, Nick, for stealing my dark horse pick and Don Stewart. Especially because you knew that was my dark horse pick ahead of time. That's no big deal. Anyway, Mike Maloney. We have to talk about him, guys, because realistically, he should be the favorite of the CSC Challenger Series Division 1. And I mean that overall. I say that over Baggish. I say that over Gates. I say that over Rick Hensey. It should be Mike Maloney. First of all, he's a two-time champ. Second of all, he has the highest average NPR heading into the season, and we really can't look past that. Out of everyone who has played in this CSC, he continues to come in at the top average every season. It always takes some sort of heroic match or heroic couple of matches to take him out of the CSC. He is that difficult to play. So realistically, he wins this quarter, and he should win this quarter. That being said, Don Stewart, if Don Stewart plays like I have heard he is back playing, he not only becomes a tough opponent for Maloney, he becomes a very, very potential upset of Mike Maloney in this season. And he might be that Final Four pick that we saw at the beginning, and he's going to be starting to roll right through again, just like Mike did a couple years ago, getting over his itis, so to speak.
Some great input, fellas, there from our third quarter. What about our fourth quarter here? That's going to be Sean Cafflish taking on Todd Wegman, Mike Carter taking on Colin George, Luke Pritzel taking on Tyler Weehee, and then John Herman taking on the one, the only Tyler Hensey. Well, how does this one shape up for us, Sean?
Hands down, this is a great quarter of the bracket just because it features two Wisconsinites battling there at the top. It features Mike Carter back in this bad boy, playing at a much higher level than we've seen him play the past couple of seasons. He's getting back to that Mike Carter of old. We have Tyler Hensey, who might be the greatest Division I player in CSC history within the next few years. And then you have Tyler Weehee, Luke Pritzel, which is going to be a huge battle, right? Weehee really proved himself in Division II, and now he's going to take on one of the top players in Division One. And Luke Pritzel, that young Wisconsinite, is going to have a lot to prove this season.
I agree with that one. Nick, how do you got this shaping up?
This is the true Wild West quarter, in my opinion. I really do think anything goes here. I wouldn't be surprised if any of these names are on the end of it. I think all the other ones, you have one of your previous champions, you have one of your favorites. This one, it really is everybody that wants to prove something. Honestly, I'm most excited to see Colin George here, if I'm being honest, a player I was completely unfamiliar with up until about May. And when you watch Colin George beat an Alex Spellman, it makes you trying to change your opinion immediately of somebody. And, you know, I'm really curious to see what he has, but of course I know he is going to be a little nervy. Even when I talked with him in May, he seemed a little like almost excitedly nervous. You know, we talked about Luke Pritzel. I hyped up Luke Pritzel a lot last season, and I still believe the hype. And when I look at Tyler Hensey, of course, I mean, seeing him in Division One is always exciting. I think that big win over Rick Hensey and his qualifier was amazing to see. I do still think he has a little bit more time in the oven before we quite get him as a champion of Division One. He might be one of those guys that takes out some of the big names. And if I had to give an edge in this section, I think we're going to see a round 3 matchup of Colin George versus Luke Pritzel or Mike Carter versus Luke Pritzel. And that's how I would shape it up. And that's not to discredit John Herman, Tyler Weehee, Sean Cathlish, Todd Wegman. I mean, those are all great competitors. Anybody could win this section. I think if I had to chalk a favorite for the section, though, I am going to lean slightly towards Pritzel.
Well, yeah, I'm circling that second round matchup. You know, Pritzel, Weehee, Herman, and Hensey. If that shapes up to be Luke Pritzel versus Tyler Hensey, I mean, that right there could be your could make a run. That the winner of that one. So we'll find out. We'll find out. But this is your CSC selection show, folks. I mean, it's going to be a great season here, brought to you by Partners Promoting Darts. It's going to be an interesting one, both from the Division 1 and Division 2 aspects. Just to wrap up our Division 1 coverage, Sean, your winner and your dark horse.
Yeah, so my two favorites are Mike Maloney and Ram Guevara. I think that Ram actually breaks through this season. I know that's not really a crazy pick, and I know that it's not really an out there pick, but it is one that has not happened yet that we're waiting to have happen. I think he's playing the best he's ever played before. I think his darts that he has now are really working for him. And if he can perform at that level that we saw in the WCS, that really high consistency out of him, he can beat anyone. He's going to get Danny Baggish most likely in the second round. He got Danny in the first round last season, and that really kind of hurt Ram, even though he still made it pretty far on the loser side. I think that he upsets the world and beats Danny Baggish in week 2 and just continues to roll.
Nick, what do you have to say?
I have flipped a coin so many times between Maloney and Rakowski. I really have. My heart of heart says that Maloney is going to be a favorite. You can't not call a 2-time champion a potential favorite. But Rakowski's just so interesting in this bracket. I think he's so interesting in this field because he really just does have that real competitive nature about him when he is playing. He is one of the nicest guys you ever talk to. Don't talk to him during a match. He looks so grumpy. He is stern faced. He is just throwing darts. He is there to work. I will have to take Maloney as my favorite. I think at the end of the day, I know it's probably the vanilla ice cream of picks, but I really do think that is vanilla ice cream's okay. You know, you got vanilla bean. You can put a lot of toppings on it. Goes well with a lot of different things. I'm going to take Maloney here. Dark horse. I don't know if I can call Rakowski that, but of course, a first-time player in the CSC, I think that's a fair pick. So I'm going to take Rakowski as the dark horse.
And Nick, I just want to point out what you're doing is you're actually doing the right thing. You're picking with your brain and not with your heart. I know with your heart, you're going to pick Rakowski. With your brain, if you're looking just at averages and overall recent success, it's really hard not to pick Maloney. It really is.
All righty, fellas. I'm going to go with winner being defending champion Danny Baggish. I think he's got a statement to prove, especially after winning it the way he won last year. So, statement.
Stuck up.
Yep, I'll say it. Danny Baggish is going to be your champion. And then how about your dark horse? I'm going to circle that quarter or that second round matchup. Luke Pritzel, Tyler Hensey. Whoever wins that one is going to make a run here. So I'm going to go with that pick, Tyler Hensey or Luke Pritzel, as my dark horses for division number 1.
Dark horse was, by the way, Don Stewart. one or the other.
I also want to jump in and just say that Danny Baggage pick makes sense. If you look at seasons, 4 and 5, you had the Mike Maloney seasons. You look at 2 and 3, you had the Leonard Gates seasons. It makes sense. We've seen a lot of back-to-back winners. And Danny, you nailed on the head. Did not like his performance in that final against Jules. And of course, I do want to mention that Jules is not in the season. He did decline. I don't want to mention too many declines, but of course, last year's finalists, it is a mentionable there. I think Danny's not going to perform that, I will say it, that poorly in a final again.
Well, special note on that. It speaks volumes to the player, and not speaking on Jules. I mean, he maybe took out for a different reason, but to transfer from steel tip to a soft tip competitively like he does, like Leonard Gates does, it really takes a special kind of athlete to do that. So kudos to those guys that are doing that transition, weekly or maybe even bi-weekly to play darts, because it is tough. It is tough. But hey, there you go, folks. Your CSC Selection Show Season 7. We look forward to bringing you the action every Monday and Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Central Time, right here on USA Darts and Partners Promoting Darts. Take care. Go ahead.
Reminder, guys, that because it is our politics season, we will start off every show with the Pledge of Allegiance. So be ready for that.
Oh,
that's not that.
That's not what that was.
That's not the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, we're excited to be back for you guys. It's exciting to have another season of fun action. You guys know where to watch it. You guys know what to expect. You guys know what to see. You're going to see some true professionalism out of us three, and of course, out of all the players as well.
Wait for these outtakes, guys. Just wait for them, because they will be a hoot. We were laughing so hard that we were crying. So hopefully you guys do too, if Nick ever actually edits it.
It's going to be huge. You ready?
Bye, guys.